On this episode of the No Order Podcast.
Oh, my phone just died. I don't know what I put on the list. That's what I get for having Twitch open and
You got it all
Pornhub
open.
and OnlyFans. I should have only had one link open.
Who you got? Does it make your list? Which one of these is your favorite? Dead or alive? Take your pick. It's your choice, just don't bootlick. Tell us what you want in your top 5, and we gotta know the reason. Let's take a deep dive. If you the same as mine, I'll be your number one supporter. Now relax and enjoy the podcast. It's No Order.
All right, y'all. Welcome to the No Order Podcast. We appreciate y'all joining us here.
Yes, on another beautiful day.
Another beautiful, beautiful day here in the Bay. How you feeling today, Bear?
Oh, trying to get better,
Yeah.
chilling.
Oh, we gotta get you turned down. It's all good.
Down right there, my bad.
It's all good. So we're excited for this one. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Exclamation point socials in the chat. It'll let you know where to find us. We do have a Discord opening up, so we'll add that. Unfortunately, I don't think it's on there right now, but we appreciate everyone out there watching on Twitch, and we appreciate everyone out there who has dropped a thumbs up on YouTube. Also, feel free to check us out on all the other platforms, streaming, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you stream your podcast, you can find the No Order Podcast. We got a few good ones lined up for everyone out there. So we appreciate everyone hopping on. And I know Bear's been getting hit up too about some of the topics also.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'm excited for the one we're about to do right now. Comedy is always good. Everybody wants to laugh. Everybody wants to have a good time. So
Yeah,
I want to hear these top 5.
for sure. So this is going to be our second.
Minds at in the morning,
Absolutely. In the morning, got to wake them up here early, and you can listen to it on Spotify and also YouTube, anywhere on your, I guess, ride to work. Not many people go to work, even though it still seems like the traffic is brutal, but on your morning commute.
Yeah, well, I think they're starting to send people back now. Can't work at home no more.
That's true. So everyone's back in action. We are super juiced to have this as our second topic for our second podcast for comedy movies, but you want to bring it in here, Bear?
Yeah, well, today we're going to talk about top 5 in no order comedies. We're going to see what he has, from spoofs to, if there's any classics on here, if there's, new ones. I noticed that, when we do talk about comics or comedians, people tend to, go with their childhood and what they grew up on, not necessarily what's out there nowadays, not, or what was before their time. So, it's always good to see someone's perspective on, what makes them laugh, because everybody has a different, it's going to laugh at something different.
For sure. And I think that's something we discussed and something we'll also talk about here in the near future. So I'm excited to bring in our special guest here with the top 5 comedy movies of all time, his top 5 comedy movies of all time. This guy's a very funny guy. He has been in the scene for the Inland Empire for quite a long time, running a lot of shows down there, and we'll give him a chance to talk about that. But I did want to bring in George into the podcast here, so let's welcome George onto the show. How you feeling today, George?
I'm good. I'm great. I appreciate you having me here. I feel like my list needs. I feel like I need to explain myself on the list.
Explain yourself on the list. Okay, yeah, no worries. This is your time. Your time to do it. We're excited to have you for sure. So thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I was just because I agree that a lot of top 5 in general, people go with what they remember and their nostalgia. But mine is a little like I grew up on a lot of Mel Brooks. I grew up on a lot of Robin Hood Men in Tights. I mean, it shows in the list, but a lot of those classic movies, Airplane and all those stuff, that's what I grew up with. And like going back to rewatch them, they just felt dated. They feel dated, and like I understand what they did for the time. So my list is more of they're my favorite comedy movies, but they're not necessarily the funniest comedy movies that I've seen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Yeah,
There was something in that movie that popped for you where you're like, oh yeah, this is, definitely something I could sit through an hour and a half of, with good laughs.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for
awesome.
sure.
So we welcome George from the Buddy System to the podcast, and we want to hop right into it on the No Order podcast with George here with his top 5 comedy movies. What do you got for us at tentative number 5 here for us, George?
Tentative number 5 is it's one of my earliest memories, actually, is watching Spaceballs when I was probably like somewhere between 4 and 6. This was before I'd even seen Star Wars, so I didn't know what was necessarily. I mean, I was 6. I didn't know what was going on anyway, but I didn't see Star Wars, and all I saw was like lasers and laser swords, and I really liked samurais as a kid, and Darth Helmet had a cool helmet, so I latched onto it not knowing that it was a parody.
Kind of seen it for that first time, and then when you put it together, how did it change the movie for you a little bit, or
yeah,
anything
it was
like?
Definitely a different experience because I think the first Star Wars movie I actually saw was Empire Strikes Back.
Okay,
And so it was a weird, like, oh, they did those things too. But I didn't realize till I was maybe 11 or 12 that it was a parody. Like in my head, they were 2 separate movies.
Right.
Oh, you didn't see the connection.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I guess, people do laser swords and people do laser guns. They also have a big dude with a helmet. I guess, tropes.
We have a special guest here today, George Farito, and he is with the Buddy System podcast, so you can definitely check his podcast out there, and he's running the comedy scene in the Inland Empire if you're in California, and we want to welcome him back. We just heard his number 5 out of his top 5 comedy movies of all time with Spaceballs.
Very classic movie, very classic.
The No Order podcast, classic movie. So you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Like I said, I didn't realize it was a parody. So I think that speaks more on Mel Brooks' genius of how to create a good comedic movie and not necessarily need to understand the context of where it's coming from, because it's very slapsticky. It's very there's a lot of wordplay in it. There's a lot of sexual innuendos. It's very classic Hollywood. If we're rewatching it, it's kind of, I don't know if you could release something like that now, but like I said, I didn't know that it was a parody when I first saw it. So imagine my mind blow when I'm like, wait, this is what it's from? Oh man, this is crazy. It's a whole new feeling.
They made up a whole new story for it, essentially in your mind. That it's like, okay, where did they get these references from? And then you see it, and I think that might actually kind of make it more funny in that sense that you saw it backwards.
Definitely funnier because I felt stupid. I was like, I didn't get it.
I don't think from me, I watched Star Wars first. I grew up watching Star Wars, so me watching Spaceballs, I went the opposite route, and I understood where they were coming from and was getting the references right away. But you seeing it backwards, I think that would probably even be funnier because you're like, oh wait, this is supposed to be the serious part on this side, and you're like, no, this is comedy on the other movie.
It's right when the laughter gets a little bit more revved up there and pushed to ludicrous mode, I guess you could say, for lack of a better, no pun intended there, But I think that, I was born in the year that Spaceballs came out. I won't age myself. You can look it up for yourselves out there on the Twitch chat. But I seen Star Wars before, but I could see how someone could possibly find Spaceballs before they would see Star Wars if you were born in maybe the year that I would, after both movies or sets of movies came out.
I think culturally speaking, though, because I grew up in Hawaii, and things got there later. Not that Star Wars wasn't there, but the pop culture around the time, around 89 to 95 wasn't necessarily in line with what the rest of the continental United States was into. And back then, the pop culture where I was growing up was very Asian, very Japanese, very anime, very cartoon. So Star Wars wasn't necessarily big. So I stumbled upon Spaceballs accidentally. I knew the phrase "use the Schwartz" before I knew the phrase "use the Force."
Yeah, and I see that makes sense because now you being in California, and usually I know the Bay Area, California in general, are typically on the cutting edge and forefront of lingo and just anything, even in the mainland. But being from Hawaii and finding that things maybe might get there a little bit slower. They have to go across an ocean to kind of get there. So
the internet we're talking, it's got to come on a boat, bro.
Right, right. Millions of Spaceballs DVDs got there before the Star Wars did. So awesome. I mean, that makes a ton of sense, and it's a pretty hilarious type story in my mind. Just thinking about all the references that you probably hear and not knowing where it's from is pretty comedy to me. So that's a really solid number 5 for top 5 movies, and definitely a classic. So what about as far as actors in there, or just things that stood out to you as why maybe on top of as far as
I didn't realize that movie was so stacked. Like when I watched it, like, obviously I'm a child. I didn't know who Mel Brooks was. I didn't know what his kind of niche in entertainment was. So I would just slowly start seeing these actors in other things. And I think that movie was the first time I was like, oh, these people can do other things. Like, I didn't realize that, oh, they only get a job and this is their job forever. I was like, oh, they're in other things, like Darth Helmet. I was like, hey, man, that's the, what was he in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
Yeah, Rick Moranis.
That's my favorite guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of still a comedy as well, but just their range that they have in the movies and what they can do. I mean, Rick Moranis is definitely a legend as well, and for all those movies.
Stand-up guy, he had to leave Hollywood because his wife passed away, and he took care of his kids.
Yeah, definitely a stand-up guy for that then. Yeah, and just kind of knew what was more important to him, and you have like this booming career, and
you already established a legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Established it and made it to where, I mean, I guess he didn't have to work at that point, but I'm sure maybe he wanted to, but life led him in a different direction as well. So commend him for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
The actors, though, for sure, like I said, it's much like recently, I shouldn't say recently, I would say maybe 10, 11 years ago when I first started to listen to podcasts, was really when I understood that stand-up comedians kind of all knew each other. At least at a certain level, they kind of all know each other. And I had no idea. I assumed that they were just like independent contractors going from club to club. I didn't know how anything worked. So when I heard Ralphie May on a podcast, and then he was like, oh yeah, I was on this other podcast with so-and-so. I was like, hang on, they fucking know each other? Oh,
they're connected. 6 degrees of separation. Everyone.
It was like 4. I was like, how do you... There's 50 states in the United States and you guys all know each other? That's crazy. And so like with Spaceballs was where I started to piece together that like, oh, entertainment's kind of this thing that
small world
is kind of in. Yeah.
Yeah, and once you're in there, you're in there, and then everyone can collab and put their minds together and come out with something that's like Spaceballs, that's like mind-blowing as far as rollover laughing and remaining a classic for people for years and years to come. So that's dope. And yeah, I know you being in the comedy scene, you probably see a lot of the same people, but then also other people. And if you travel and go other places, you see people either doing that circuit, or even if you don't necessarily talk to the person, you see them and you're like, oh, I see this person there. And then you can kind of become more acquainted that way.
Yeah. I feel like it's a lot like, cause we're kind of plugged into the local hip hop scene as well. It's hard to be in the city that we're in and not kind of interact with the musicians and the artists there. So I feel the more rappers and the more producers that I meet on that side of entertainment, the more I realize that like it's all kind of the same grind of the longer you do it, the more people you know, the more, but at the same time, like the less people you know that are actually good and the more people you know that are just trying.
Yes, absolutely. So everybody and their mom's a rapper nowadays, but then you can get some of the same type of, open mics, but that's good that you guys share kind of that space too, and probably I'm sure allow people to come and kind of do their craft, because I know myself, sometimes I can do some like comedy type music, so that also can go hand in hand and intertwine as the art form.
We try to out here, because this city's very pro arts in general. Like every first Thursday there's an arts walk, they open up their studios, like it's very pro creative type, and I didn't want to create a scene or a business that wasn't a part of that sort of environment. Like I wanted to cultivate something that's supportive and something where everyone can grow, because I think with the tide, all ships will rise. There's no reason why we can't all be good and famous.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think me and Bear talk about that a lot because it's kind of crabs in a bucket sometimes when you try to get people, you know, becoming more famous or more well known or just try to make a living out of it. But it doesn't have to be that way. So that definitely speaks to exactly what you're saying. It doesn't have to be that way. Everyone can eat off of these things.
Yeah, that crabs in the bucket mentality got to go away because it doesn't help anybody out.
Yeah, I think the people that think that way are just mediocre. They are just another crab in the bucket. But when you're the king crab in the bucket, you're like, no, they'll pick me. It's fine. You know,
you're not necessarily worried about that because they can see your talent coming through.
It'll show.
Yeah, it definitely will. But I mean, until someone can get to that level, they're going to maybe think that way. And I think speaking of how good California is for that, I know being in the Bay Area, I'm sure it's the same down in Southern California, LA, Inland Empire. I mean, just California in general. People are more apt to maybe having that crabs in a bucket mentality. Whereas if you go a lot of other places, you find that people kind of connect a lot more. At least I see that and think that way, that people are really connecting, and that's what brings them more to a national level. Have you found that in your area as well?
I think it's kind of more of a double-edged sword. We're hindered in the Inland Empire because of the fact that we're in California. You know, California is so dense and populated that it's hard to get away from that crabs in a bucket mentality because you're trying to do something that literally 90,000 other people are trying to do.
Yeah.
And whereas like when I went to Denver to do some comedy, I was there for a week. I met the comics there. They were there. They all connected. There was a smaller scene. There was less people doing it. And because they're not necessarily in the entertainment mecca state, they're all kind of doing it for the love of the game. So they all have their own voice. They all had their own creativity type. They were doing it because they enjoyed the craft. And so because they connected on the craft, it was a much more inviting scene. And I think it does speak to the idea that there's less people. It's a different scene. It's not California. It's a passion. It's really a passion. We're out here. It's Bay Area, LA. It's harder to find someone that's passionate about one thing and wants to do one thing, especially in LA. You have a bunch of comics that want to be actors. You have a bunch of rappers that want to be comics. And I'll be honest, most comics want to be rappers. So it's a weird disconnect.
Not gonna lie, I'm guilty of a lot of that and being jack of all trades sort of deal, I suppose. But it sounds like they kind of get maybe a little bit of a leg up in different regions if they can do it for that kind of craft and maybe take a Japanese type style as they want to just perfect that one thing. Make sure that they can hone that. But I mean, I'm not going to try and pigeonhole anyone at the same time, and I want them to like come out with new stuff because that creativity can kind of go that route and open up new avenues for them. So yeah, I can absolutely see where it's that double-edged sword, like you say.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm talking down on the people, the jack of all trades, because I'm the same way. I
understand that.
I do a lot of things.
Yeah, we all know.
I think it's
like
just my pet peeve is when like, I don't want to name names, but when there's a comedian or someone who's coming out, introduces themselves as a comedian, but their first 3 minutes of their set is talking about how they went to an audition, how they had to drive from LA to somewhere, where like they're identifying as a comedian, but their grind is of an actor, and no one relates to that.
Right. I don't get that much as out here in the Bay Area because we don't have as big of a actor type scene, but I guess maybe it's same with either like
I'm
rap
jealous
or
by your
arts.
music scene out there, bro.
Yeah, we have a really great music scene out here for sure. I know Bear knows a ton of people, and
very
it is
widespread, and you know.
Yeah, very eclectic for sure too.
I'm very glad where I live, and you know, and the artists that come up and just have fun with it, and you know, really talk about their life experiences, and you know, I get into more music that way.
Yeah, same.
We got a shout out to D-Town in the chat from Dark Joe Pa. So he loves Denver. So we'll give a shout out.
That's my favorite city, bro. It's for me, it's the greatest hits of every big city in the United States in one city.
I haven't been myself, but I got to get out there. I know it's
imagine like LA, if the streets were wider and there were 70% less people, everyone would be happier. Everyone would be chill. It's amazing.
I love it. I love to hear it. I need to get out there for sure. And we're gonna say Spaceballs can be a top classic for a lot of people out there. If you haven't seen it, maybe some of the younger people out there in our chat need to go check that one out, especially since we got so many more Star Wars movies that have come out since then. We need another Spaceballs movie here ASAP.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun. Someone should do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna tweet a Spaceball movie with aluminum foil and like fluorescent bulbs.
Hey, I know I tried to be a podcast host and a rapper / comedian / actor, but sign me up for that one. I'll audition for your rendition of Spaceballs 2, 3, whatever.
You can be the Han Solo.
Exactly.
Cameraman 3.
Best boy grip.
Wow. Moving right along, we are with the No Order Podcast here with George. It is top 5 comedy movies of all time. We want to say thanks to everyone who is out there with us in the Twitch chat. Feel free to give us a follow or send us a message, KnowOrderPodcast@gmail.com. That's KNOW orderpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, that's number 5. What do you got for number 4 for us here on the No Order Podcast, George?
Oh, number 4 is Harold and Kumar. I couldn't decide which one because I think it's a solid comedy, but what I love about Harold and Kumar is it's so against the grain in terms of Hollywood and industry. You have 2 non-white lead actors getting 98% of the lines. Like even when there is a Caucasian person on screen, they're almost in the background. Like it must have been so hard to pitch this movie to Hollywood at the time.
Yeah.
To be like, hey, we're going to get this Korean dude and this Indian dude, and we're just going to smoke weed and go to a burger place that no one's heard of.
Yeah, and I think the only Caucasian person who was in the forefront of that movie had to play multiple roles in Jamie Kennedy.
Yeah, I forgot about him.
Which is one of the funniest parts.
NPH was on there. Like,
oh yeah, NPH was in there too. My bad, I forgot to add that. He's hilarious in that movie as well.
Very extreme in those movies.
Yeah.
If you look at the credits too, and it says Neil Patrick Harris as Neil Patrick Harris because he wanted to make it clear that the character he was portraying was not him. Like usually it'll be Neil Patrick Harris as himself, but he was like, no, that's not me.
No, he was just playing how everyone would think he might be in real life, which still could possibly be him in real life these days.
He's a dad now, bro. I don't know if he can do that.
Yeah, and sometimes you got to change it up, but everyone can switch up and be who they want to be and make changes and still be hilarious in those movies.
Have you guys seen Harold and Kumar recently?
Like after I've seen it 100 times in the past.
I mean, I watched it maybe 4 months ago, and a lot of it bangs different now, especially after a pandemic, after all of the Black Lives Matter. Like, there's a lot of jokes in there that went over my head that I didn't realize was like a minority experience with the world. I didn't know. Like, it's just well written. And like, for example, when they go to cross the street and there's no car in sight. Like, and then the cop just comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's like sometimes when you're a minority on the streets. You're like, I thought I was by myself, and this cop just came out of nowhere.
They were lurking on you.
Yeah. Dude, cops are rolling up in like Nissans now. It's crazy.
They got vans, they got everything.
They got everything. Unmarked anything. That's wild.
It's like an unmarked Vespa. I was like, hey, man, slow down.
That's hilarious. I think that the experience after, say, the pandemic and everything, and then going back and watch another movie, because I did watch a movie in the past and kind of had that same similar effect, that it's like, oh wow, this puts a new twist on things per se that didn't really think about until now. Different experience in the United States. It can bring even more laughter, but also more sadness or pain to a situation. But yeah, I think that laughter side is huge for everyone to experience.
Oh yeah, I think the series by itself really was solid. Like you were saying, you couldn't really pick between one or two because in both, I feel they stood out and were pretty good. Usually, when you get into series and they kind of tend to fall off or tend to not be as funny. But I felt Harold and Kumar going into Guantanamo Bay was pretty solid too.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to hear more on George's aspect or take on that also. So
on Guantanamo Bay.
I know you haven't been there in person, but just the movie itself.
About this on the podcast, man. I told you one thing. Don't talk about my time in G-Bay, bro. Don't bring it up. What I liked about about them going to White Castle was that the humor was subtle. You can, in hindsight, you can tell that trying to sell this movie to studio execs was difficult, and certain parts of the script had to be well written, and you can tell that. Not that the number 2 isn't well written, but with number 2, they were like, all right, you guys did it right. Just
go all out. Yeah, do your thing.
And they were like, oh, this is what we wanted, bro.
Yeah, that's what we were waiting for in that first movie. And then I guess maybe it's good if you can plan that and like, okay, we're going to hit them with this, and then they're going to be wanting more, and then we're going to really just pull out all the stops afterwards.
I would really love to sit down with Kal Penn because, he worked with Obama and everything. I would love to hear his perspective in the writing room about how that went down, because that was not George Washington. Wow, that was the Revolutionary
chopping
War.
the cherry tree down, or what?
It was George Bush, and it was a very tumultuous time, especially for someone that looked like him. So I would love to sit down with him for 10 minutes and be like, yo, man, what was that like?
Yeah, in kind of aftermath and backlash of like 9/11 and all of that, and then kind of being now like a leading character, and I guess the lead protagonist, or if you want to call him antagonist in both the acting world and then also in real life, is probably a crazy experience for sure.
Yeah, 'cause you knew him from
and
Wilder,
while
right?
Harold and Kumar makes me laugh hard, it's in my list because it's important to me in terms of like representation and what it did for the entertainment industry. What became okay after that movie? There's a lot. It's like a Mel Brooks kind of thing. There's a lot that movie laid that everyone's kind of taking advantage of now.
For sure.
What I liked about this movie too is like they became their own. I felt because you were like, oh, that was a guy from Van Wilder. Oh, that was a guy from American Pie. But now now you got their names. Now that's Harold and Kumar.
Yeah, they waited their turn, and now they're forever known as Harold and Kumar with 8 O's and 2 U's.
Yeah, so.
So yeah, absolutely, Bear. That's a good point that you make. And, like Rick Moranis or any of the other actors, you see them, and that's where they get their break. When we were talking about Chappelle and having kind of the Robin Hood Men in Tights be his breakout, and then now you just know him by Chappelle or Dave Chappelle. I mean, even just one name like your Prince or Cher is a wild, and being a world renowned or well-known actor.
To be fair, when that movie came out, he was still a Chew, so he was still one name.
He was. Yeah. Well said. That's definitely true. I think here we've got a bunch of people in the chat just listing off their comedy movies, and maybe some of those will be on George's list here. So stay tuned with us here on the No Order Podcast. We appreciate everyone hanging out with us today and hearing George's top 5 comedy movies of all time. We've got number 5, Spaceballs. Number 4, Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. What do you got for us up for number 3, George?
Number 3 is The New Guy.
The New Guy.
Yeah, okay. That one's a personal classic.
Right, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, it's there's something about DJ Qualls and his weird face and the smoke show of Eliza Dushku. It's the perfect like alchemy of misfit casting that shouldn't work, because you have Eddie Griffin in there too. Looking at my Janet, like
crazy eye. Eliza Dushku, I remember her from Bring It On. I think she was in
Bring It On and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yep.
Okay. There's a scene where she's looking at the mans, and she just she gives him sexy eyes, and I'm like, I think this is my favorite movie now. Just the way she looks at him, it's just, oh, that hits all my bells, lady. Keep doing that.
Right. Yeah. Don't go out of your lane and try to do something else. Just stick with what's working.
What I like about the new guy, though, is that it is unapologetically exactly what it is. It doesn't try to be fancy. It doesn't try to be woke. It doesn't try to. It's like, look, here's these funny people, and in the first 5 minutes, he's gonna break his dick. That's how this movie's gonna go, and it's pedal to the metal. And he lights a statue on fire. Like they stuff a little person in a trash can, and they roll them down the hill. It's 15 minutes in, you're like, this is offensive but hilarious because
they're going all out.
Isn't that where comedy is, though? Offensive?
Yeah, pushing that status quo and pushing the boundaries has really always been kind of that forefront of comedy, and really being unapologetic, like you're saying, George, to anything that people are going to find offensive about themselves or about the world. I think
they always say, like, you can't always be serious, you gotta throw some laughter in there. So it's like these comedians could take that and make you laugh off of something that's supposed to be serious. And I always found that great. Like, it is sometimes fucked up what some of these, jokes are, but that shit did make me laugh.
Right.
That shit did, you know what I mean? I did see it a little bit different after he said that. So Yeah,
and I think the time of when it was done, it was more socially acceptable for them to do it, even though it was kind of bad and against other people. And, Eddie Griffin, he was getting into some trouble back then with what he was saying in his stand-ups and everything that was going on back there. I mean, you could do your history or research on that one, but absolutely. It's a great story. It's awesome. Go for it for sure. Maybe for a different podcast for us, but I think the new guy is definitely a very funny and hilarious movie, and they pull out everything. And would you consider it? I don't necessarily think it's a coming of age movie necessarily. Maybe more just like an all out like raunchy
I think it's a
comedy.
classic fish out of water kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And what I like, I think I didn't think about this till just now. What I thought, it is a very offensive movie. If you take it, if you write down all of the bits on paper, it could be very offensive. But they circumvent that whole like comedic process by having your white male lead go to jail, learn from a minority, but also go to jail and be completely like on the bottom of the totem pole, no matter where he goes. You're already less than 5 minutes in. You feel bad for the kid. He's not anywhere where, like, he's the worst trash of white trash. He's got a band. He lives in a trailer with his dad. And so he's very relatable and he's very vulnerable in the beginning. And because he shows so much vulnerability, because he doesn't look like your normal Thor or Captain America, there's something endearing about him, and you don't feel so disconnected from him. But cut through DJ Qualls and his weird face that he gets the hot girl, but you can also be super, super offensive all the way through, because now it's this poor kid's life. That's what you're watching. You're not watching people get bullied. It's like this poor kid just wants a good life.
Going through it at the same time.
Because
just the struggle.
You said in most of the movie, he's like the bottom of the totem pole in everything he does. If I can remember correctly, everybody's always trying to help him because it's like, well, shit, you can only grow from there, man.
Yeah. Once you're like kind of rock bottom in that sense, there's only one way to go, and that is up. And I suppose that's a good moral that you could take from in the story or something.
I just think it's clever writing, and I think the writers knew what they were doing with that. They were like, well, with this, we got free reign now, and they were right. They did.
And he definitely plays that character in a lot of other movies, I know.
It's definitely typecast with that.
Typecast, right? And I mean, once you're an actor who fits that kind of body type, it's not like he's going to come out and, like you said, be a Thor. It'd be
a carrot top. Be a carrot top.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's the only one who might have done it. I think here that's a pretty solid one and a very unexpected number 3 with the new guy. So not saying anything's wrong with it. This is George's list, not yours. If you want to say what's on your list, feel free to drop us a message here on the No Order Podcast. And we appreciate everyone hanging out with us on Twitch with the True Hogs Club. So we're down to number 2 here, George, on the No Order Podcast. What do you got for us?
Number 2, I would say, is more of a coming of age tale with one of my favorite comedic actors, Justin Long, in Accepted.
Okay.
Accepted. You get a lot of early hitters now. I think you get Jonah Hill for a second.
Yeah.
In the supporting cast, there's a lot of comedic actors that we're seeing now kind of blow up. So
I only saw this one on TV, so maybe I missed even some of it. Yeah, as far as like maybe raunchy stuff. You know how they cut it out on like
it's
made
super
for TV.
raunchy. I mean,
it's
their
super
college
raunchy.
is South Harmon Institute of Technology, bro.
He made it all up on his own, so he didn't have to stay at his mom's, right? Or something like that. It was, he made the college up, so
told his parents that he got accepted.
Yeah,
to
he got
college.
accepted.
He got in, and then he had to make up his own college and
because he was
put
like,
all
no,
his
of course I'm
ragtag
gonna get in
crew.
there. It's my safety school. And then they're like, nah, homie.
That's
And it's great. What I really liked about it was his sort of like, I'll just do it myself. That spirit of nobody wants me. I want to do something. I'm not going to wait for anyone to do it for me. I have to do this myself.
pull yourself up by your own bootstraps.
Yeah, I like that energy of because what he did is very real. Like all he did was scan another thing. He took the letterhead off of it and he wrote his own letter and it looked official. And I was like, dude, I could do that. I could get into any school.
Yeah, or just get your PPP loans. Who knows, you know?
There you go.
I heard a side note, some guy was rapping about scamming EDD and then he got caught. He got caught. And they're like, imagine the courtroom when they play his song. It's going to be lit.
He's going to be jamming on the way to the holding tank.
Right. That's so funny. Yeah, but I mean, people can do that. I think, what did they do that in Parasite? When they're like trying to make their resume look better so they can get that job with the family. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been done in movies, but maybe that was the first time that it had been done.
I'm sure it hasn't. I'm sure like some Mission Impossible movie in the 90s are like, we're going to scan this and it's going to be a security credential.
Right. All right. We're not giving accepted the rights to that.
Don't give them that. Not at all. But there's a lot of, I think what I enjoyed about Accepted, and I think it I don't know if it goes with saying with all the movies, this is how it felt to me, but it felt like on set, on Accepted, that a lot of the actors were brought there because they were funny people. And the director was like, all right, let's make this the funniest scene we can. Because there's a lot of little quips and a lot of little lines that don't really fit, that feel ad-libbed. And you're like, that's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It gives the free reign to the actors to kind of make it their own. And I think that's big for and a sign maybe of a good director too, to kind of let them do their thing.
I think there's a value in having a collaborative directing process. I mean, it's not for everyone. Like if you go to see a Scorsese movie, you want to go watch a Scorsese movie, but there's a certain, when you're surrounded by a good team there and you can lean on them, there's a certain freedom and a certain fun that kind of comes with it. And it came through for me in Accepted. Just the story too. I really connected with the story of the world judging these people because of their, or not necessarily their choices. Like there's a stripper who's paying her tuition in cash. And she says, like, nobody wanted me because when I went for the interview, they asked what I did. I was a stripper and they all judged her. It's like money spends the same. And that's how he felt as dean of his college. He was like, I'm still getting your money. Like it doesn't, if you want to come here and you want to better your life somehow, and why should anyone have the ability to stop you?
Right.
And wasn't it his uncle that was like telling him to go for everything?
Was it?
It was,
I don't remember.
It was a family member, I believe. The older gentleman, I forget his name at the moment.
Lewis Black.
Yeah.
Oh, Lewis Black.
He was like telling him like, fuck it. Like you could be the teacher. Like, you can make any class that you want on, I just remember those parts of that movie. And I was just like, yeah, that's pretty pretty funny how they had some of the, you know, the little, like here you said, the liners when you hear some of the comedy going through that, and you're like, oh yeah, this is pretty funny. Like, I personally wouldn't say it was like outrageously funny, but it had those liners where it made you laugh consistently.
Yeah, for sure. Like there was that one dude who they were like, "What do you want to learn?" And he was like, "I want to learn how to blow stuff up with my mind."
Oh,
And they're like, "All right, man.
And
You're paying. You can.
They'll figure out a teacher
Go ahead,
in a class.
We'll make a class for you. And no lulls in the movie. Yeah, I can also just picture Lewis Black just like kind of pointing at somebody right in the face.
What's in here? Just angry.
Right, angry guy. Grumpy Old Man. Shout out to that movie. I just remembered through Lewis
That's
Black.
a good one.
I mean, I know he wasn't in that, but yeah, just as far as grumpy old people. Shout out to you if you're a grumpy old person in the chat. So we're down to our number one here on the No Order podcast with George.
Oh, actually, before we get to number one, I did want to say something about Accepted and the list in general, because I feel like my list isn't a relatable list, but there is a reason to my madness. And I think for me, I don't like to paint with broad strokes, but for me, comedy is best when you have a message. Sometimes you have to package it cleverly. Sometimes you have to say it directly. It depends on the message, but the message should always come first, because if you're not saying something, why are you saying anything? And that's how I feel about it. And with Accepted, even though it might be a mediocre B comedy movie, if you dig between the lines, the idea that higher education is a scam is through and through in this movie. The idea that someone can teach you something even if you might know it better is through. Like, questioning higher education at that point when the movie came out was just starting. You know, people saying like, no, college is a scam. That was just starting.
And one of the more relatable messages in comedy and just in the world in general. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And having a meaning behind it is going to really hit home more for a lot of people than something that just would be really forgettable then at that point.
Yeah, for me, comedy is more of like a delivery system to what you really want to say for the world. You know, you're making people laugh because it's disarming, and when you disarm them, you get an opportunity for them to really think about what you're saying. And that's what I liked about Accepted, was that it's in the title. You know, it doesn't matter who you are. If you want to do something and you're going to go after it and you have that ambition, I accept you. That's all I want out of you. Because me personally, I don't get along with people who don't have an ambition. I don't get along with regular people. Their life of going to work, going home, having a family looks nice. It looks easy, but I have nothing in common with those people.
Yeah. But at least you accept them too, in the same sense.
Yeah, but I still accept them because that's what they want to do.
Right. And you're not going to hate on them for, you know, living their life unless it's infringing on stuff that you want to do, because you're not going to infringe on what makes them happy either.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm more jealous than anything. I wish I could have just a normal life. I wish there wasn't this need inside.
Well, you signed up for
it. Something.
But what's a normal life though?
Just a normal job, going to school, getting a good job that pays the good bills, having a good home. I have plenty of friends now that are having kids. They just bought a home. You know, they're living that good old fashioned, like, let me just be part of this economy. And I'm jealous about that, because I don't know how it is for you guys. You guys are obviously creative types as well. But for me, it's not a job that I signed up for. It's this need, this itch that I need to scratch to create something, to make people laugh, to do something. And it is at the expense of my own soul. Like, I bomb all the time. I fail all the time. And I would rather have a path laid out for me, whereas like, hey, if you go to school for 6 years, you can do this job, you'll get paid this amount of money, you can buy this car and this house. That would be great. But you know, I think entertainment, you have to be a trailblazer.
Yeah, I think now, after the pandemic really showed a lot of people that I don't have to have a little crappy job. I went and I didn't have nothing else to do because I had to sit at home and, you know, couldn't really go out. There was nothing really to do. So I learned how to do stuff for myself, or I perfected my hobby, and now that's my job. And now I'm able to create and make money off of what I like to do.
Love that.
And a lot of people went from, working at BK or whatever, just a small warehouse job, and they were like, you know what, F this, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna start this little company because I know how to make coffee cups with pictures on them. And guess what? Everybody's at home right now, so they're buying it up, and all of a sudden I have money now to do what I need to do. And I feel like, man, that really spread a lot of people to be like, okay, now everybody can be creative. Now I could link up with this guy because, he's making mugs. I make T-shirts. We could combine that, and now we got a website. And I love to see that. Yeah. I love to help the small guy out because, when you really look at what's out there in the world on these big corporations, and you see how much they want you to see, because for the fact that one company could own everything and you have no idea because they don't want you to know. It's just like, man, it's really good to see that I could go down the street and get everything I need now, in the sense of I wanted someone local to have my T-shirt company going. Well, guess what? I became my T-shirt company because I learned how to do it. I learned how to, make the graphs and everything, or I outsourced it to the guy down the street who just started his, graphic design. So I really feel like the norm is really going away because the creativity is so much nowadays that's going to be the normal, is that you got to be creative to survive. You have to be creative to make something.
Well, having that, I guess, multiple streams of income, and also I think balancing that creativity with having to survive if you're not in that lucky position, or I guess maybe if you worked hard for that position to have enough money or the means to survive, then that's going to be up to your specific situation. It's unfortunate that everyone can't have what they want at that time, but then also having that drive and passion like George and so many other artists will have to say, hey, I'm not going to go down that same route of going to school and or just working a mundane job, and I'm going to go and try to make something of myself and follow my passions. I think that's commendable, and I know you're saying that same thing as well, Bear. So I know that the pandemic gave people the opportunity to do that, and it also took away a lot of opportunity for small businesses and things of that nature. So obviously it's not gonna all be just that broad stroke as you're mentioning, or black and white, and there's a lot of gray area there.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's something that we can talk about more as well in the future. We're excited to hear that number one here soon.
Before we get to your number one, do you have any honorable mentions for
Dodgeball?
Dodgeball, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Dodgeball.
That movie makes me laugh hard every time.
And you know what? I think that's the first Ben Stiller movie we've heard on the podcast.
Yeah, really? He's got a lot of them.
And that's the first one I think we've heard.
Yeah, that's
anybody
to
mention for their top five or honorable mention.
Mm-hmm. And I think your boy from The New Guy is in that one as well.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And of course,
accepted. Justin Long's there too. I mean, that's Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
That's a star-studded cast as well.
Right.
But what I like is in that is that the gym that they start off with was just average Joe's gym, and the whole cast, despite them being stars, they feel like average Joes. They play their characters to the T, and it's perfect. And it's, for me, it's the perfect blend of slapstick and the perfect blend of creative writing, but also that pick yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, this is what the hand we've been dealt, and this is what we're gonna play, and we're gonna play it hard.
Yeah,
they had good lines in it too, memorable lines.
A lot of memorable stuff. I mean, dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball, and
nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
Definitely a classic one. I mean, you got a pirate in that movie, so you can never go wrong with that. And
and
Patches
they
O'Houlihan.
play dodgeball in S&M outfit, like in the semifinals.
Yeah.
The Ocho. I love
Daddy.
that.
Remember he had Daddy on his neck.
Hilarious. So that's a great honorable mention with Dodgeball. And I think we're ready to jump into your number one here, George, for top 5 Dead or Alive comedy movies of all time with the No Order podcast.
Now, I think it's my number one because of me growing up. I grew up with Def Jam comedy. I grew up watching, Chris Rock and Damon Wayans and all those guys. And just that brand of humor is really, it's become kind of my core. That's the filter through which I view the world. And so because of that, my number one is White Chicks.
White Chicks. Okay, I wasn't expecting that one either. I think I might have another Wayne's Brothers movie above that one for Wayne's Brothers, but tell us why you picked it. And I think it's fair too. Yeah, absolutely. And I want to know specifically why you pick White Chicks for your number one.
I
know it's number one for a lot of people.
I think it's very interesting and just the behind the scenes because, that was always the shtick for if you're a famous Black comedian, your next role is going to be you in a fat suit. Like that was always number 2. You're going to be in a fat suit or you're going to be a slapsticky woman like Big Mama's House and Nutty Professor. Like that was the path. And so it's like the Wayans were like, if that's the path, how about we do it how we're going to do it? How about we be skinny, affluent white chicks? How about we flip it a little bit and see where that goes? And it's funny too because I think the opening scene, they're undercover and they racially profile someone right out the gate as police, very, very blatantly, like, no, this is what we're here for. You're clearly the guy. And, they cause a scene. He's like, bro, I just brought you vanilla ice cream. Like,
and they're not trying to sugarcoat it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can't, there was no evidence. There's nothing there. And to open with something like that so cleverly, I was like, that's quite a statement. And when it came out, I don't think a lot of people realized that's what was going on because they're so good at what they do. They're so good at hiding things in the comedy. It was such a slapsticky scene, but you're still seeing, corrupt police action and no real consequence.
And that goes back to that message that you're speaking of, just having a meaning to it, whether the message is positive or negative in the grand scheme of things. It's still making you think and hitting close to home for a lot of people out there, or making other people think.
It's letting you know it's a message.
Absolutely.
No matter what, that, like he said at the beginning of the movie, they racially profiled somebody. So that's the message. Like, throughout
like the Don't Be a Menace spoof, kind of with Wayne's message, So message. Yeah, that makes sense. And they always have done that. So I can see why the movie White Chicks would be your number one, George.
Yeah. It just seemed fun for them too. And I think the scene that really holds in my heart is when the dude goes to steal his bag, or her bag, I guess at that point. And he's running away. He's like, oh, I just got this white girl's bag. And she's in heels, takes off her shoes and starts running at her. A bionic
chases
woman?
Him down, through the streets of
hopping over cars and stuff.
Right.
Imagine how terrifying it'd be if you're just a bag snatcher and you're like, all right, we're good, work's done. And you look behind his linebacker, 6'1" black dude's just coming at you, but he looks like a white chick with black lips.
Right. That's
terrifying.
Hilarious. Yeah.
I really like Terry Crew in that movie and just how he was, because
he's such a scene stealer in general.
Yeah, he commands that attention for sure, and he makes it his own. And of course, when he sings the song and he knows it and they're not expecting it, like, obviously super memorable. So we're making our way downtown to the number one here, which we just hit on the No Order podcast with George and his top movies.
If you haven't seen the movie, bro.
Yeah, so go check that one out if you haven't seen it. I think everyone has to see that movie at least once in their life, and probably will see it multiple times. And we do want to thank you for coming on to the No Order podcast here with us, George.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. We are glad you enjoyed it.
Hey, George, real quick. So I just wanted to get back to what we were talking about earlier about cereal. We're going to go back to the cereal comment. Okay. I just want to hear at least one of your memorable cereals in the morning. I know definitely it was never a peanut butter Captain Crunch type, But you got psychos out there that eat that stuff. So
You got to try it, George. You got to try it.
I'll go buy some peanut butter Captain Crunch because I
don't think they sell it anymore.
Like,
it's like trash. It's like with rat poison and stuff.
No, extra. It's iocane powder. I've developed a sensitivity to iocane powder. I ate a lot of cereal as a kid. I was a fat kid, so we had 4 different cereals to kind of cycle through, and more often than not, I would pick 2 of them and put them in a bowl.
Okay, let's hear this combo.
Mix it, okay.
Yeah. However, I think my go-to cereal as a kid, like that's what I would eat no matter what, is Fruity Pebbles.
Nice, number one, baby.
That's a lot of people's number ones.
A lot of people's number one.
I'm trying to hear this combo.
Oh, so if I'm getting Fruity Pebbles, then I'll probably throw in like some Cocoa Puffs.
Okay.
With Fruity Pebbles?
Yeah, because I want to mix the flavors.
He's switching it up.
Okay, I did not expect that. Chocolate with the fruit flavor?
Yeah. Like if I had a peanut butter cereal, I would mix that with Cocoa Puffs as well.
Oh, if I had a peanut butter cereal, I'd just kill myself,
Bro, he's hating, bro. He's hating.
You're not a fan of peanut butter?
No, I love peanut butter jelly sandwiches.
He just hates the cereal.
But the cereal just doesn't make no sense to me. It's nowhere in top 35 on anybody's list. And, it just really amazes me that how this got even an honorable mention, a noticed, it's like one of those... things
Bear, I'm going to bring you a box of the cereal. We're going to have to watch you eat the whole thing.
No, it's just trash.
Bear reacts to peanut butter cereal.
Yeah, exactly. Check us out on YouTube as well. No Order Podcast. Bear reacts to peanut butter cereal and special guest George Ferrito on the No Order Podcast.
Fruity Pebble mix.
With the Fruity Pebble mix. I guess I got to try that one too now. I'm just adding it to the list of forever.
What was you said you had about 4 rotations of cereal. So
Fruity Pebbles. Vary kind of, but more often than not. So it was Fruity Pebbles, Cocoa Puffs, the, what were they called? The Oreo O's?
The Oreo O's.
Oh, okay. That's one of a more newer one.
Yeah, newer ones.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, we had Oreo.
I mean, they've been around, but as far as
where you'd look into the Oreo O and you'd see a beach on Nickelodeon.
Okay, I think I wasn't watching Nickelodeon back then at that time in my life anymore.
No, I never, not one time.
I was on Skinamax.
And then Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Oh yeah, Cinnamon Toast.
Okay, classics. Yeah. Okay,
Cinnamon Toast Crunch will mess up your mouth though. So will the French Toast Crunch, but
that roof.
Oh, so you had the new French Toast Crunch? I mean,
mediocre.
What about the Churro Crunch?
Hey, I almost bought that at the store the other day. I want to get it.
It's different from the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Has its own little flavor. So
I'm gonna have to. I'll just eat it on our next podcast. Yeah, we're feeding the General Mills. Save your box tops, send them to the kids so they can.
Yeah, are you guys sponsored right now? Hang on, is that why you brought up cereal?
No, it's just one little.
Yo, Captain, make it happen.
Yeah,
right. Crunchitize this podcast, Captain.
Exactly, Pat. Come on, Captain, crunchitize it. Well, that is the end of the No Order Podcast, and we not forever, but today's No Order Podcast. We hope, right? Exactly. But we want to thank you, George, for coming on to the podcast. We really enjoyed having you, and we hope you enjoyed it as well.
I did.
Thank you.
Come back anytime. Holla at your boy.
Oh, for sure. We're for sure going to have you back on. We're going to try some of these cereals. We might have to have you on eating the cereal with us too. And then I know we got some other topics that people want to see. I know in the chat, they want to know your top 5 comedians of all time. So we'll have to get to that one in general. I'm sure that's going to be a tough list.
Oh, I'm down.
And that's then I know you're big into Marvel as well. So yeah, I know people have been wanting to get some comics and things like that on the podcast too.
Cool.
Thunder and Love came out today, right?
Oh yeah, it did. Friday. Yeah, for sure. So we won't want to date ourselves right now, but we're gonna sign out here. But if you want to hang out with us for a little bit, if you got time, we're just on Twitch, just hanging out. But before we let you go, we want to give you a chance to kind of shout out some of the things that you got going on as well. So. Can't forget about that. Can't forget about that. So let us know where you're going to be next or what you got going on. The floor is yours.
Well, the Buddy System Co. we started in 2017. It's an Inland Empire production company. We do skits, we do podcasts, we do live shows, we do open mics. So we do a lot of that. If you are in my area, follow at the Buddy System Co. on Instagram. If you want to hear some of our podcasts, go follow at the Buddy System Co. anywhere you get podcasts. We have the BuddyCast. We have like 600 episodes. If you go to podbean.com/the Buddy System Co., there's a whole library of content that you can go through. I'm performing 3, 4, 5 times a week. This month I'm doing 6 times a week for 5 weeks, I think. Staying busy. So if you want to, if you want to see where I'm at the GeorgeF on Instagram. I'm at the GeorgeF on literally everything. So if you want to follow me, I'm there. So at the GeorgeF, at the Buddy System Co. That's all I got. Awesome. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. Glad you enjoyed it. We had a great time. We appreciate you, George, coming on the podcast. Thanks so much, Bear, for hanging out with us. I'm Do, and we are the No Order Podcast, KNOW Order Podcast. We're signing out. Peace out.